TFA fam, welcome back in. It is the first look at week 12 waiver ads. Like we say it every week, but somehow this season just keeps flying on by. Do just want to mention real quick, we have one of the first two like bye Mageddon weeks coming up in week 12. We do have 6 teams on bye with the Falcons, Bills, Bengals, Jags, Saints, and Jets. So make sure you're keeping that in mind as you are picking up your waiver ads and your streams for this week. But with that out of the way, Kev, let's dive right into it. Let's start off with the quarterback streaming options for week 12.
Yeah, unfortunately, there's not at least in terms of like massively available quarterbacks, there's not a ton sitting out there that have good matchups this week. But there are some that are like around 40 to 50% rostered. Bo Nix being one, still only rostered in 48% of leagues. Nix absolutely torched the Falcons today, 38-6. Nix had his first 300-yard passing game, completing 28 of 33 for 307 yards and 4 scores. He basically set career highs in yards, touchdowns, and completion percentage in this one. Next up, though, is a good matchup against the Raiders. The Raiders have allowed the 7th fewest passing yards, but they have allowed the 10th most passing touchdowns and the 5th most rushing touchdowns. Overall, they have allowed the 9th most fantasy points to quarterbacks. Nix isn't just a streaming option. He's a must-own quarterback at this point with matchups against the Raiders, Browns, Colts, Chargers, Bengals, and has the 8th easiest remaining schedule for quarterbacks rest of season. And also, Bo Nix right now is the QB7 in fantasy points per game. So Bo Nix definitely is a must-add and a must-play for a lot of these upcoming games. So, which is pretty impressive if you really think about it, considering that they basically just have Cortland Sutton at wide receiver right now. So if they can add some more weapons, in the coming years, I mean, this could be a really fun offense to target. Next up is Anthony Richardson, and I guess sitting at quarterback for a few weeks is just the way to go. We saw this work for Bryce Young, and now once again Anthony Richardson. Richardson returned with a vengeance today. He threw the ball really well today, completing 20 of 30 for 272 yards and a touchdown. He also rushed 10 times for 32 yards and another 2 touchdowns for 28 fantasy points. This is exactly what we were so excited about coming into the season because he can be so dynamic. This week, the Colts get a home matchup against the Lions, who have been middle of the road against quarterbacks this season. But, Anthony Richardson, if he can continue to play, anywhere close to this, especially with his rushing upside, he's going to continue to be a solid option. It's just, the problem with him most of the year is that he just hasn't been able to throw the ball at all. So, I mean, this was a really encouraging sign for Anthony Richardson. If he was dropped, he definitely should be re-added. Next up is Geno Smith, who's also right around that spot. He's rostered in 52% of leagues, completed 25 of 32 for 221 and an interception. But he also rushed 4 times and a game-winning 26-yard touchdown for 16.7 fantasy points. Smith is now the QB12 in fantasy points per game, and now gets a home matchup against the Cardinals, who have yielded the 7th most passing yards on the season. I think Geno is probably a locked-in top 15 quarterback this week against the Cardinals. Now, the next one, I get it. I put the emoji on there. Really, really gross. But Drew Lock, all reports sound that Drew Lock is going to be the starting quarterback rest of the season. Daniel Jones has a $23 million guarantee or injury guarantee. So if he was to get hurt at any point and he could not pass a physical March 1st, that $23 million will become guaranteed. And there's zero chance the Giants are going to put up with that. So Brian Daboll's already hinted that there's a change coming. They're going to turn to Drew Lock. And honestly, I don't think it's that big of a difference between him and Daniel Jones at this point. What I will say and why I have him on here is because they have the best matchup for quarterbacks. The Bucs have allowed the 2nd most passing yards and have tied with the Ravens with the most passing touchdowns to quarterbacks. This is obviously gross. I don't feel great about it, but there's not a whole lot of great options this week that are just widely available. So if you have a quarterback on bye, this might be something you have to look at in a really good matchup. Drake May is also another one. May has really impressed despite having some of the worst weapons in the league. May completed 30 of 40 passes for 282 yards and 2 scores. He also rushed 3 times for 27 yards for 19 fantasy points against the Rams. May has now scored 18 or more fantasy points in 4 of his last 6 games. This week, the Patriots travel to Miami to take on the Dolphins. This is not the best matchup as the Dolphins have allowed the 5th fewest fantasy points to quarterbacks. But with his rushing upside, and a lack of other options this week, Drake May is in play. And then I just wanted to put out there, if Stafford, Caleb Williams, Russell Wilson, or any of them available, all of them are rostered in over 55% of leagues. But if they were be sitting out there, I would definitely, obviously, prefer those guys to someone like Drew Lock or Drake May.
Really, all I want to see is another shot of Drew Lock just wrapping some young Jeezy on the sideline. So I hope at the very least we at least get that. But let's move on over to the Week 12 running back ads for waiver wires. Not anyone I'm considering a must add. I threw the Raiders running backs on here just because we saw Zamir White and Alexander Madison get injured. There hasn't been anything official from the teams yet in terms of severity or how long they're expected to be out. But I did see some Twitter doctors thrown out there that it could potentially be multi-week injuries for both of them. So if that's the case, you can look to Amir Abdullah, especially in a week where we have 6 teams on bye. They also get a matchup against the Broncos, who going into this week had allowed the 5th most receiving yards to running backs, which is obviously where we'd expect Abdullah to really make a dent in terms of fantasy purposes. And if both of them do end up being out, I think for deep leagues, again, with 6 teams being on bye, you could look to Dylan Lobby, the rookie from New Hampshire. I actually really liked him coming into this season. So if you need like a deep league dart throw, you can look his way. Gus Edwards, I'm throwing on here. Both of these running backs had 5 carries going into halftime for Sunday Night Football. Gus Edwards much more efficient with his carries, though, averaging 5.2 yards per clip to, I think, 1.8 for J.K. Dobbins. Dobbins did find the end zone, so his numbers look a little bit better. But Gus Edwards, 10 carries last week to 15 for J.K. Dobbins, and Dobbins again just has not looked the same as he did at the beginning of the season. Other than that, there's just another week to look at handcuffs really for the most part. So guys like Braylon Allen, Jalen Wright, Blake Corum, Garendo, Ray Davis, Cam Akers, Trey Benson, Jerome Ford, Khalil Herbert, Roshan Johnson, and then Justice Hill and Keaton Mitchell. Just want to throw out Roshan, I think, is interesting because he did see his playing time really increase, had more opportunities than he typically had in the past several weeks. Is that because of the OC change? That was just the game plan. Obviously, that remains to be seen, but that's definitely something to monitor going forward. And then, if anyone's just looking at the box score, they see Cam Akers and the amount of carries and snaps he had compared to Aaron Jones. I think that was just more due to the injury that Jones had last week versus this really being anything sticky going forward, but really just continues to pound home the fact that Akers is the guy and Ty Chandler is nothing at this point, which really hurts me to say.
Yeah, we were talking about before this. Like, it's been a really weird year right now because we just haven't had any like major running back injuries. Obviously, we had the stuff with Chris McCaffrey to start, but that happened before the year. But we just really haven't had any of these major injuries to wide receiver or running backs yet. And you just kind of feel like, knock on wood, big time, but that something is going to come. We've just run too hot on
Yes,
running backs just staying
100%.
healthy, and so and now is that time to be guys like Trey Benson and Braylon Allen and these running backs that we absolutely know their role. If something happens to one of these guys, have to be rostered. I am not going to sit here and wait for an injury to come, and then I have to try to bid, whether it's through Fab or high waiver priority, to try to get some of these guys. So I want to be trying to add all these guys, as much as I possibly can at this point. So
100%.
yeah, especially the ones that we just absolutely know the role. Roshan Johnson, I think, is also involved in that as well. So, all right, let's move over to the wide receivers. First up, Jerry Jeudy. I wasn't even actually going to talk about him because I figured he was rostered in enough leagues, but then I went and looked myself, and I was like, oh, okay, he's not. Because this dude has been targeted 22 times the last 2 weeks and had a monster day today where he caught 6 of 11 targets for 142 yards and a touchdown. Monster game for him. Now, one of those, most of that came on an 89-yard score in the first quarter against the Saints. But, he's going to continue to see a massive amount of targets, with Jameis Winston now at quarterback. So I don't know if I would be expecting games like this moving forward, but I definitely think the 7 for 73, the 5 for 79 that he's had each of the last 3 games certainly is something that we can expect. So Jerry Jeudy is easily one of the top waiver ads this week if he happens to be sitting out there in your leagues. Next up is Quentin Johnson. Now, this game isn't even over yet, but the Chargers do have the 8th easiest remaining schedule for wide receivers with matchups against the Ravens, Falcons, Chiefs, Bucks, Broncos, and Patriots. While the 18% target share isn't anything special for Quentin Johnson, But the Chargers will need to continue to throw the ball at a very high rate because of that with their schedule. So Johnson has now scored a touchdown in 3 straight games as well, and will continue to be in the mix as a flex option on most weeks. Another Browns wide receiver. I mean, we have 2 of them on this one. Elijah Moore. Since week 7, Elijah Moore has been targeted 35 times and is averaging 13 PPR points per game. The 35 targets is 18th most over that span. As long as Jameis remains a starting quarterback, Elijah Moore remains a viable flex option in PPR formats on almost every single week. Adam Thielen was activated off IR this past week, still only rostered 19% of leagues with very little in the way of target competition. And the way Bryce Young has started to play a little bit better, I do think Thielen can be a useful flex option down the stretch. Obviously, he's going to have some healthy legs because he just hasn't played for most of the season. So I do think Thielen is definitely worth a look. Ricky Pearsall, I did absolutely nothing today. People are probably wondering why he's even on here because he did a very big 0 today if anybody played him. But the 49ers didn't really get a whole lot going today at all on the offensive side of the ball against the Seahawks. But better days are ahead for this offense, and I want pieces of this offense. And they're going to have to be throwing the ball a lot more, and they really can't lose a lot more games because they are 5-5 at this point. And so I just want pieces of this offense, and I think Ricky Pearsall has better days ahead of him. Demario Douglas only rostered in 28% of leagues. Douglas continues to be a really reliable PPR option in PPR formats. Listen, I know he's not a sexy option at all, but he's been targeted 21 times the last 3 games. It's kind of the safety valve for Drake May on a team that doesn't really have a whole lot of a lot of options here. So with 12 teams on bye over the next 3 weeks, I think Douglas will be a viable wide receiver 4 in PPR formats. Alec Pierce continues to be the downfield target for this offense. He held in 3 of 4 targets for 74 yards today for 10.4 PPR points on the season. He leads the league with a 21.6 average depth of target, and the 20 deep targets he has also leads the league. This kind of role is going to lead to high variance, but whatever he hits, he's going to hit with a long touchdown. So it's going to be a little bit harder to project. We're going to have to pay attention to some sort of matchups, but we know Anthony Richardson, the best thing he does is throw the deep ball. So Alec Pierce is going to remain in the mix here as a flex option on certain weeks. Christian Watson today, 44% rostered, by far his best game of the season, caught 4 for 150 against the Bears. I'm not sure how trustworthy he really is at this point, but the talent is certainly there. But he's now seen 13 targets the last 2 games. So I do think he's at least worth a speculative add in 12-team leagues. And then after that, Rashad Bateman, I definitely think is just going to continue to be somebody you can take a look at. Devon Vele, I actually think is kind of an interesting name. He scored a touchdown last week. This week he had 66 yards receiving, kind of starting to build a rapport with Bo Nix here within this offense. And so, with a team that, like I said, doesn't have a whole lot outside of Cortland Sutton, I think he's starting to build a little bit of a role here. So I definitely think somebody who is widely available, only rostered in like 2% of leagues, definitely should be looked at, especially in 12-team leagues or above. So I do think Devon Vele is definitely a look. I put MVS on here. I guess I don't have a choice at this point. Dude caught another fucking 70-yard touchdown today off his 3 targets. I was like, oh, here we go. This guy. It's just not sustainable. It's not something sustainable. I don't want to waste a roster spot on this. I've seen this before. It's just not something that I think you can project every single week. I get it. What Derek Carr does the best is throw the deep ball. But that wasn't even what happened today. He just busted loose on what should have been probably a 10 to 15-yard gain, and he turned it into a house call. This is not MVS. I don't think MVS is great. But, hey, if you want to add him and throw him in your lineup, by all means do so. I'm not excited about the MVS. And then the other guys on here, Curtis Samuel is more interesting if they weren't going on bye. I think when coming off bye, they're going to get all their guys back that are hurt and kind of reduces his role a little bit. But he has been utilized quite a bit. And then other guys on here are much more deeper league ads.
Let's wrap it up with the tight end streams for week 12. Going to kick things off with someone who was on the list from last week who came through for week 11. That is Johnny Smith, went 6 for 101 and 2 today. He continues to just put up really solid numbers week in and week out for the past several weeks. He tied Tyreek Hill with a team lead with 8 targets today. A little mini revenge game going up against the Patriots in week 12. The narratives never hurt. Will Dissly was also on the list last week. He's staying there this week, having another good game through the first half of Sunday Night Football, had racked up 73 yards and a score. Now going to get a matchup against the Ravens, who have allowed the 10th most fantasy points per game to tight ends. If neither of those two guys are available, could look to Theo Johnson. Tampa Bay is giving up the third most fantasy points per game to tight ends. But I actually feel better about this passing offense with Drew Lock there versus Danny Dimes. So I actually think this is an upgrade. And then lastly, AJ Barner, a little asterisk there because it's obviously going to depend on whether or not Noah Fant can make his way back to the lineup. I assumed he was going to be back today with them coming off of the bye week, but that was not the case. So maybe this is something that keeps him out an extra week. So if those first two guys are available, like I said, Theo Johnson or AJ Barner definitely will be.
Yeah. Tight ends, a couple tight ends went ham today. I mean, Taysom Hill also went absolutely nuclear today. He's rostered in 54% of leagues, but just an absolute monster day. For the thing with the Browns is they allow so many explosive plays. That's really what their MO is. They do a very good job, but they just tend to just allow these huge explosive plays, and we saw it today. I mean, with Taysom Hill with this 75-yard run. I mean, he looks super slow too. Like that was like the longest 75-yard run I've ever seen. But good for him.
Nobody around him.
Yeah. So, and then of course next week they get the Steelers, which George Pickens might absolutely go nuclear against that defense. So, yeah. But other than that, it's kind of a weird day today. A lot of divisional games that didn't really get there, but we still had some decent scores there. Only I think 4 or 5 wide receivers had really big games today. Amon-Ra St. Brown, and my goodness, the Lions give no fucks about just stepping on your throat. They were up 35-6 and went for it on 4th and 3. I was like, no way! Total disrespect. And threw it too. It wasn't even a run. Threw the ball for a touchdown to Brock Wright, I think it was. So I was like,
yeah.
Gotta love it. Just absolutely. He is great for fantasy football because it does not matter if they're ahead or behind. They are going to continue to throw the rock.
Yep. Going to continue to do it all.
Yeah. I wouldn't expect Jonnu to continue that run. I mean, I think Jonnu's good. He's a decent option, but that was just a monster game from him today. And a lot of it came off that long 57-yard touchdown run he had at the very end. For Jonnu today, but I would still prefer Cade Otton.
So would I.
And it probably even helps me even more that Mike Evans should be back after this week too.
Yeah, those the target's still going to be there for Otton as well.
P. Scott, best wide receiver pickup. It really just depends on who's sitting out there. If someone like Jerry Jeudy's sitting out there, I doubt he is in the most competitive league. He's probably not sitting out there, but I think Elijah Moore is definitely widely available in most leagues. I kind of view Jeudy and Quentin Johnson kind of the same. I think for a lot of leagues, they've probably already been rostered. But, yes, absolutely. Grab Elijah Moore and drop Mike Williams. I am on board with all that. It's just Elijah Moore is just being peppered at target. And it's not just short and intermediate stuff. I mean, they hit him on a long touchdown that he had on a sideline grab today for his touchdown, which was really impressive. So they are continually looking to hit him deep. So I do have no problem with that.
And then Jeffrey, should I accept trade sending Otton, receiving Jennings? I have Kittle. Also saw that Jeffrey has Will Dissly as well. Jeffrey, doesn't really look like you need the receiver help with the receivers you have, but I don't mind doing that with having Kittle and then Dissly sitting there as well.
Yeah. Add Jerry Jeudy for Cedric Tillman. I don't know. That's tough. I probably would still lean Cedric Tillman slightly. I mean, Tillman didn't have a bad game himself. He just
didn't do what literally everyone else in the offense did.
Yeah. And like I said, a lot of Jerry Jeudy's production came on that 89-yard touchdown. That's not sustainable.
Yeah. And Njoku ate.
Yeah. I mean, everybody did. I mean, that's the great thing about Jameis. And I actually was going to put him on my streaming box, but they're playing the Steelers, and the Steelers. We just saw them shut down Lamar Jackson, But the thing with Jameis is he just does not care. He is going to sling it. He's like Ryan Fitzpatrick, and that's what we were hoping for all year. We finally got it. So, Down by 4, I got Fairbairn, he got Ferguson. Actually, I think you have a pretty good shot, actually. I mean, I don't think we have I don't feel great about the Cowboys offense. But it could be wrong. I mean, things, change. Cooper Rush has had moments. I think it was a couple years ago where he's had decent games, but for his standard anyway. But Fairbairn is also one of the best kickers in the league too. So I think he should be okay. It's going to be close, obviously down by 4. But I still think you got a decent shot. I would say it's 50-50 at this point.
Yeah, there's definitely still a chance there.
Yeah. So, anyways, that being said, I think that's all the questions we got here. But I think it's an interesting waiver week. Like I said, if there are, if you can withstand it, I know with 12 teams coming up, being on bye, 6 this week and 6 in another couple weeks from now, it makes it a little bit tougher. But if you can make it work, I would definitely be looking to stash some of these handcuff backs because something is going to give at some point. I just can't imagine we're going to go all year without any really big injuries to running backs. I just don't see it happening. It's been wild. Great for us. I mean, great fantasy football for sure. But I just keep waiting for something to happen. It never seems to come. But there are a ton of great handcuff backs sitting out there.
Yeah, it's been great unless, you're someone like me who went hero RB approach and took CMC in the first round. Then it has not been.
Yeah. I keep saying I'm just talking about through the season. I mean, that happened before the season happened.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And a halfway PPR wide receiver might have Javonte, Murray, Tank, Mooney, BTJ. Who should I drop and see? I wouldn't drop any of those. I don't think you need to drop any of those.
Yeah, I'm not dropping any of those.
Have to see with Mooney. He had a little bit of an injury, but I do believe the Falcons are on bye this week, so I don't think it's that big of a deal. So, anyways, I wouldn't be dropping any of those
6 teams.
I think you're in a good spot. And thankfully, we had a bounce back today from Brian Thomas. Came all in garbage time, but still 5 for 82 at least was promising. Hopefully, pray that Trevor Lawrence is back in week 13 because I do not want to have to watch any more of that shit show that they have a quarterback right now. So, anyways,
no more McCorkle.
Yeah. Anyways, let's get out of here. Hope everybody has a good rest of the week. Hope everybody gets the dubs this week. If not, we'll be back here shortly with a lot of content. Be sure to drop any question you may have in the comment section below, and we will get to you as they come. Have a good rest of the week. Bye.